So from my own side of things, again, is just a introduction, as I said, to two of the gentlemen who, as we know, need almost no introduction. Frederick, General Manager of SkimTurf, without a shadow of doubt, the leading specialist in really applying AI and satellite imagery to turf management, and is working with closely with superintendents across the country from Europe, America, and probably even wider in that side of things, really looking about improving course conditions and really controlling costs. And from Jason's perspective, as I said, certainly somebody that when I went on my international travels has been both a founder, a leader. I think he's maybe a part-time Calvin Klein model on occasions like that, but a very, very big friend of the industry, renowned speaker, support and advocate. And as I said, obviously with Club Caddie there, working both US and internationally, really to modernize T-sheet management, point of sale system, membership building, operation reporting, and a whole host of other things, which sort of Jason will maybe come on to. So on behalf of my own side of things, for hopefully most people on the call will know of myself, but for those who don't, Gareth Macklin, founder and CEO of Obbi. Really, Obbi is the sort of leading international compliance, operation, safety and training platform that ultimately drives operation efficiency and keeps your club safer. And for those that probably sitting on here sort of wondering, well, look, how and why has today's come about? It really is a conversation with three very distinctive and different companies. In many cases, distinctive and different operators, users, purchasers, but with a common problem. As we said, we're all looking in the basis now, irregardless of our role, irregardless of our club, and irregardless of our geographic location, is how can we work with the confines of our clubs in terms of all of the limitations and stuff we have, but look to much more proactive elements around sort of working smarter, connected systems, data, and all of those things to come on to alongside the technology. So just again, Frederick, from your side, and Jason, is a massive thank you. And maybe if there's anything I've missed, I'll start off your own side, Frederick, if you want to maybe give a sort of a 30-second bio for the listeners on your own side of things, and maybe a bit more detail on SkimTurf.
Awesome. Well, good to see you, everyone. As Gareth said, General Manager for SkimTurf Management, leading this company, bringing top-notch technologies like AI and satellite imagery together to help golf courses maintain their property the most precisely possible. And I think Gareth explained it very well, and we are going to go in deeper details later. And I'm bringing another accent to the table, being French myself, with Polish background, living in Spain, and leading a solution that works worldwide, USA, Africa, Europe. So, technology has no boundaries, and that's what we are going to talk about today. So thanks for having me.
And Jason, maybe from your own side of things.
Sure, glad to be here, Garrett. Thanks for the kind introduction. I'm Jason Pearsall. I'm the CEO and founder of Club Caddie. Club Caddie is a golf course management solution. We run the front of the house or the business operations of a golf course. But I'm also the owner-operator of a golf course here in Michigan called Warren Valley. So I sit in a unique seat because I build technology for clubs, and I also run one every day. So my focus is really simple, helping operators make more money, reduce their stress, and create better experiences for their golfers.
And Jason, if we maybe come back to you on sort of the first point, the fact that obviously you have both the luxury and the challenge of wearing multiple hats, obviously being a founder, the technology progression, as we all know, Club Caddie sitting there, that the evolution over the years has been phenomenal. But much more important, as you said, you're at the cold face, day and daily, team, guest, experience. What is it that you look at sort of clubs these days in terms of how they're operating, and where from your area of sort of expertise that they're really losing sort of most time, most money, most opportunity, in many cases without maybe even realizing it?
For every golf course, their biggest line item is going to be labor, right? But the biggest loss that I see isn't actually labor or costs, it's disconnected decisions. Most clubs have T-sheet data in one system, POS data somewhere else, turf information in someone's head, and financial data and accounting software that nobody really looks at until month's end. And so leaders are flying blind day to day. When information isn't connected, you miss opportunities, pricing, staffing, inventory, maintenance timing, marketing, all of it becomes reactive instead of proactive. So that's where the money leaks out.
And from that perspective, it's one of the conversations, certainly from my own side in Obbi, we will hear in many circumstances, okay, well, look, what we're doing at the minute, it appears to be perfectly fine. It isn't broken. As you said, we're working on an Excel spreadsheet and we're working on a sheet of paper and we're working in something else. Those people that maybe haven't seen the benefits or realize the cost opportunity, what is it that generally convinces those people from switching to this is the way we used to do it to here is the better way, particularly whenever those ones I think, well, actually, no, I'm a little bit more prehistoric, or I don't think there's that potential change for us in benefits?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're really asking why clubs rely on manual processes and why they're not using technology when there's so much technology that's available. And honestly, I think it's because historically clubs didn't really have a choice. Golf has been underserved by technology providers for decades. Systems have been complicated, they've been disconnected, they've been expensive. They didn't talk to each other at all. So operators learned to rely on experience and intuition. And a lot of the times they're really good at it. But today the difference is that we can combine intuition with data. And when you do that, performance jumps quite a bit.
Brilliant. And Freddie, maybe if I bring you in at this side of things, Jason talks there very much about intuition. And, when we speak to the agronomy departments across the world, in the environment, that anybody that certainly speaks to me, these are experts who are not sitting for years and decades in rooms. They're not looking at pages of data. Most cases, they're not even looking at computers, but they're looking at, their work environment office, which is out on the course, a mixture of the weather, what is happening in terms of, the sun that has come, the sun hasn't come, the water, the moisture. Looking at that same basis, come back to the operators that you deal with, how they mix that intuition, which has been perfectly fine and sufficient for decades, to now technology such as yours, which is at a world-class leading edge, and how they sort of transition across.
Yeah, so, when you ask what's the missed opportunity, focusing on the golf course maintenance part of it, like, of course, there's, boots on the ground experience not going to disappear, and maintenance team remain the experts. However, technology brings that to a whole new level. And, they even cannot avoid it because of regulations. We are going to be more and more asked to do more with less, precisely managing your water, precisely managing your chemicals, not only doing it precisely, but also, have the scrutiny and the data to be able to demonstrate it. And that doing this manually extremely difficult. Plus labor, it's difficult to, hire and retain highly qualified agronomy staff. And everything happens while, golfer expectations remain high or even higher than they were before. So right now it's about, trying to embrace those new technologies, as Jason said, that were not existing before, and making sure that you can leverage the power of data at scale. Now you have tools, AI automating things that manually you could never collect on the entire golf course. How can I find insights at the whole golf course scale because I have this data, and you cannot manage something that you don't measure. So that's the big difference. It's just data and technology is coming as a complementary tool that didn't exist before.
And you touched, Frederick, there on something certainly we see in Obbi all the time, where the regulations of doing more with less, I'm going to maybe take it and bring Jason into the conversation of the expectation of doing more than less. As we all know, in 2026, whether it be our members, whether it be the boards, whether it be our own staff, and most importantly, whether it be ourselves, pretty much most of us are all expecting to have more and do more with either the same in certain circumstances less. And when you talk there, Freddie, about the change in technology, particularly around, AI, there's people in the industry such as yourself, Jason, at the world-class leading edge of stuff. But can you maybe touch a little bit more for those people who maybe are not as familiar of the benefits around, the whole change now in the last 12, 24, 36 months and what that potentially means for them in terms of all of the opportunities.
Sorry,
You mean specifically about regulations, or in general about the change with the technology that came in?
Just the change specifically where you're talking about, data collection, data analysis, and really be able to get an awful lot more data from the people that you're seeing and the data that you're collating, which, as you said, 10 years ago would be pretty much near on impossible.
Yeah, so, in the past, and I just said a little bit, like, you didn't have technology for those things. So when you wanted to recollect data on your golf course, well, you have to send people and collect it manually, from your green speeds to clipping yields to sending, samples to a laboratory, which was taking a few weeks to give you results. And at best, clubs, well, they keep it in Excel sheets or just on top of their mind, believing that memory is going to be sufficient. We have good memory, but usually it's short term. Well, right now, what we are able to do is use multispectral satellite imagery that AI is going to analyze and break down into information about nutrients in the plant tissue, soil moisture, vegetation indices like turf health, growth, performance. And all of this is automated. What that means is you don't need to do anything except using a login and be able to review this turf condition diagnostics in your computer or in your phone. And what that gives you is you save the whole time on collecting this manually and focusing on what matters, meaning making decisions. That's the value adding part. And technology automates what we could calculate ourselves, just it does it in a few minutes while you will spend the whole week collecting this data.
Maybe just bring it back yourself, because the points that Frederick raises is something that certainly we've all heard many times before in terms of the analysis of data. But taking it more, you've talked there about the historical lack of supply from unconnected systems, and again come back to the intuition. Where do you see that sort of progression with AI now at the minute on bringing together what you're doing maybe in certain 1 or 2 or 3 different previously disconnected systems, as well as using AI information coming out of it?
Yeah,
go ahead, Frederick.
Yeah, go ahead, Jason, first, and I will completely.
I was going to compliment you on a line that you used. I really liked it, which is it's hard to manage what you can't measure. And we have a similar line within our software company, which is what gets measured is what gets done, right? And so I think that you're able to create accountability when you're able to measure, are my green speeds consistently stimping at a 12, or are we seeing fluctuations where they're dropping, where they're changing week to week? And it's hard to hold somebody accountable if you don't have the data to actually, show what is happening. So I think what we have is we now have a proliferation of data across systems, and we're just getting to the point where operators are able to take that data and to make better, more informed decisions. You can't just start with technology and have it make a change right away, because it takes time for your system to build up enough data to help give you the information that you need to make those types of informed decisions we're talking about. So I think that we're really at the beginning right now of what AI is going to do for golf course operations. And AI is only as intelligent as the data that you have. It's the difference between a golf course general manager who has 30 years of experience and somebody who's their first year on the job. That 30 years of experience is the data, the memories, the, just day-to-day that they've gone through, ups and downs, helps them make better decisions. And the data in our systems is what's going to enable golf course operators to make better decisions into the future.
No, brilliant. And Frederick, just bringing you back in, you were going to add there.
Yeah, I totally agree on this. And I think one interesting thing in our specific case is, sounds a bit crazy, but with satellite imagery, you can go back in time. So all this data that Jason is insisting on how valuable it is, like who remembers the values of green speeds or nitrogen levels 3 years ago? While we have access to archive satellite imagery, and this AI is trained on it and understands your golf course, which allows you to make decisions from day one with trends, patterns, evolution of the golf course. So that's critical, and there is no good AI without good data. That's the starting point, of course. And you asked me, Garrett, about connectivity. We do everything possible so that this data, we are not speaking about raw data. The whole goal is to make it more the most actionable as possible. So through visualizations, you can visualize your entire golf course at one glance, but you also have, for example, AI components that work for you like an assistant. Every time you have a new analysis of your course, you receive an AI generated summary, or you receive alerts, or you can interact with the assistant, ask questions. It's going to, link you to research literature and so on, so that you can make decisions. And the whole goal, and I guess it's a bit included in your question, is once I make a decision, how I automatically execute it. And one example is GPS sprayers. It's great to have a GPS sprayer that you can send and spray to a specific area of your course, but how you define where that sprayer is going to go. So right now, like via a satellite image, you can define, for example, I don't know, all the soil moisture points that are below 20%, mark only those areas and send it directly to your equipment so that your GPS sprayer sprays what you want it to spray based on data. And that's where all these technology stacks make sense, where you are first informed and second, help to basically automate low value adding tasks.
Yeah. And I think it's very interesting, Frederick, you talked there about such as satellite imagery going back in time and just preceding that. Jason's talking about what gets done, what gets measured, the whole accountability. As those have heard, obviously, me speaking before, the fact that we're called Obbi, we actually named the company after that. Obbi stands for obligation. And it's certainly a bit, I think, of all of us. One of the things that I've seen, and over speaking to both of you offline, is the ability from taking what, generally speaking, is reactive planning, whether it be on an intuition perspective or on a data perspective, to try and proactively look at it. You chat there, Frederick, about, satellite imagery. If I take our own side of stuff there, whether it be compliance records or training records or, operational, any of those things, it's the ability to take that data and say, okay, well, look, this is where we're at the minute. This is the patterns. And therefore, based on that information, whilst I don't know the future, I can probably make a reasonable estimate and change the information coming off it. And that's where sort of bringing Jason back to your side of things again, is that obviously with Club Caddie touching every element from the tee sheet to food and beverage, from a reporting perspective, what do you see as the biggest operational pain points that general managers or operational managers don't really realize is fixable?
Yeah, look, the biggest one is complexity. Running a club is a difficult business. You're running 8 businesses under one roof, and that means juggling tee sheets and point of sale and inventory and staff scheduling and memberships and reporting. And historically, that's meant multiple systems and lots of spreadsheets. What we did with Club Caddie is unified all of those workflows into a single platform so that operators don't have to think about technology. They can focus on running their business. When everything connects, GMs suddenly see the whole picture, not just a partial view of revenue and utilization and labor efficiency and even their customer behavior. And they see it in real time. And that changes how we make decisions. It moves us from firefighting to leadership. Instead of reacting to problems, we start anticipating them. For example, if the tee sheet demand increases, staffing should adjust automatically, or if inventory runs low, reordering should be triggered, or if weather changes, pricing strategies should adapt. And that's when operations become more predictable and less stressful.
And I think, again, coming back to your audience perspective, that was the commonality between all 3 companies. As you said, Jason, it is bringing together all elements of connectivity from the complexity we solve. As you said, you're talking about T-sheet, staff, and order. Frederick, from your side, you're talking about the AI, the data, the agronomy. From our side, it's compliance, operations, safety, and training. But if I bring that back, Frederick, again, I always look at 2 types of people: those who are completely actively involved in the technology evolution. Either they are doing it or they're actively hunting down a solution, say, yes, we can do better. And then there's the second person who's sitting, well, actually, I'm not really sure. I've heard the horror stories. It takes a lot of time and effort, and that resistance to change. What advice, Freddie, from your experience dealing with clubs, would you give to those people that is the common mistakes in terms of implementing a new system, that maybe if they knew those things now, it might take that fear of change out? And again, Jason, I'll come back to you a second on the same question.
Well, from my perspective, I think, all those technologies that we just mentioned, things evolve so fast that if you rely on the assumption that you are going to watch the others doing and hope that you are going to learn from their mistakes, most probably you are going to be left behind. So my advice would be, don't be afraid to empower your teams, make them try, test, learn, and make them feel as well it's okay if they, fail to understand the technology in the first few weeks, months, and it takes time to learn. However, waiting and watching is not going to be a successful strategy because you are basically allowing other clubs to take a significant advantage over you. While, not only speaking about all three solutions, but most of the time technology is sold via subscriptions. Worst case scenario, you can, resign at the end of the month, end of the year. But the learning on the way is way more valuable than just, wait and see strategy, which with technology is not a good one.
Brilliant. And again, as I said, Jason, throwing the same question back to yourself with your experience.
Yeah, look, I think it's very difficult for owners and operators to force technology onto their staff. I think it's more about empowering your staff. And so you should be, in my opinion, encouraging your staff to bring solutions to you, not the other way around. And if you think that you want to, evaluate a solution like SkimTurf to improve conditions, get your superintendent on, ask him to do a demo with Frederick. I guarantee you, if he's anything like mine, they'll be very impressed by the end of it. And, once they have that buy-in, they're a lot more likely to use the tool because they feel like it's their decision and they start thinking about how it's going to make their life easier versus being told that they're going to try something that at first, admittedly, anytime that you switch technology, it's a step backwards so you can take 2 steps forwards, right? And if you take that step backwards without the vision that you're going to be taking 2 steps forwards, it's really hard to get them to buy in. So, my view is that it shouldn't be make the decision we're going to use technology. Just go to your staff and say, I want you to try to find technology to make your job easier, and let them come back to you with solutions.
And it's interesting you said, Jason, certainly if I give our 2 pence worth from Obbi's perspective and the evolution of where we were many, many years ago, and we all learn across that journey. So in the early days, we had been speaking predominantly to general managers. The general manager speaking to were communicating to us on behalf of the club, and we're having the conversation that this is the problem we have got here, or this is the problem we've got in this department. But then what happened again, certainly if I was trying to sort of prevent those challenges for people going forward, as you said, the empowerment of staff. I've seen historically, we're speaking to a general manager and he said, well, look, this is the challenge around safety in our entire club, or this is the maintenance challenge, or even this is the training perspective. And even some cases where they don't have an expert. So general managers who maybe don't have a HR department are talking about the training challenges. If they have a training person or a HR manager, you're maybe more likely to speak to them. But what we've then seen is, one of the prerequisites now when we're working with Obbi, it's an absolute prerequisite. We will speak to all the senior department heads as a minimum to say, okay, well, look, you're the expert in agronomy. You might be the part-time person in maintenance who's only maybe working, 1 or 2 days a month, but let's talk to you to understand, because certainly, as you said, the general managers or department head can't understand all of the problems. And certainly from my side, the advice is, if you're looking at technology, as Jason says, bring as many people into the solution, even if you're leading it. And there's 2 ways, as Jason says, get them to bring the solution. But if you're certainly trying to drive the solution like that there, get the team in on your side and get their buy-in by saying, well, actually, what is their problems? And we always talk about the magic wand in Obbi. If you have a magic wand tomorrow morning, what does a great solution, what does a great help look like that? And ask, how realistic is that coming through on the other side? And probably, Frederick, then just coming sort of time-wise, taken to the final part of us, where we're then looking at those people who are pushing forward, whether it be general managers or department heads, and really convincing up the line. And I'm thinking more maybe from board members who don't really understand both the complexity and the challenges of being in the front line, but where they have maybe an authoritative role in terms of, budget or sign off. What is your experience of bringing that information in the correct way to these people to say, okay, well, look, this is an investment. And as we know, sometimes an investment in pure money terms, but it's also investment in time, change, and the way we're doing stuff. So trying to help the individuals listening, what advice would you give them for those people such as boards to bring the boards in closer to really realize this is much better for the club, even if there's concerns or change around it?
Well, I think it relates a little bit to what Jason said a bit before, is, believe that your teams bring it up to you because it has some value. And even if you don't grasp all of it and how many thousands of dollars or euros it saves in ahead of time, just let them strive and show it to you over time. Because as I said, it's something that it's not a piece of equipment that you are going to have on your hands in the next 10 years, but those people are going to demonstrate to you by doing that is valuable. Because at the end of the day, all this data that is provided, those tools, AI aims at making you more informed to take more precise decisions. And then there's plenty of use cases that just prove you that I spoke about precise fertilization. It's proven that it can save you up to 25% of your chemicals budget. So they have to present it as a budget, but on the other side, you also have to have leaders that are receptive to change and making comfortable that their teams can learn, because you are not going to get this tool and, as Jason said, revolutionize everything in 2 weeks. There is a learning curve, and you need to learn by doing. That's the only way.
And if you go back to Jason yourself, probably where we started there, about that, certainly for those in ourselves and operators on the call here who are very much at the forefront of digital integration, best in class practices, and bringing that together, where I think we would all say that integration is no longer optional if you want to run a smart, efficient club. It is almost a prerequisite. What do you see as the risks, in addition, we already spoke about, from those operators who are still sitting, that even where they're using technology, where you've got obviously a world-class solution brings everything together, as we all know, you can still buy the individual components, which is an awful lot better than in your head or intuition or paper. But what risk do you see for those systems that are still operating in isolation, and how do people address that in a better way?
Yeah, it's the synthesis of knowledge is really magic, right? So it is not enough to know that your tea sheet is full if you don't also know that your restaurant is understaffed and that you're not going to have, the kitchen help to handle the demand, right? And so these separate systems give you a partial picture of what is happening in your operation. And if those systems aren't talking together, that partial picture doesn't help you to make the best decisions possible. So, it's really simple. It's just you bring the data together, you have a better picture, and you can make a better decision.
Brilliant. And as I come on just from the audience, I come on to sort of last question. That's really sort of a heads up. In about a couple of minutes, we've been asking for the hundreds and hundreds of questions that I'm sure that always come in these webinars, and everybody like turning on their cameras and putting their hand up. Is not the way these always work. But just looking at that, both Frederick, coming to yourself first and then coming back to Jason, is that if you could give club managers, club owners, or senior managers one practical step to prepare for 2026 around this whole topic, what would it really be?
This question I want to answer is like a conversation I had a few weeks back with one of my clients, and he actually confessed to me that at the beginning, when I was telling him about satellite imagery and AI, he was just afraid that all those new things are going to come and replace him. And after some time, he told me, you know what, now that I'm learning and doing those demos, like Jason said, like I'm do demos, get to learn. Like that, it doesn't feel anymore like it's going to be replaced by AI, but by golf courses and people that use it better than him. And I think the one practical step is get yourself, your hands dirty and learn whatever way you want by using those tools, because that's the only way you are going to feel the full potential it can have for you. And usually those companies are quite open to train you and educate you on those things.
I'm just smiling, Freddie, before I come back to Jason, just coming in on a personal bit, adding on, you said, is that fear. So as most people know, obviously, Obbi was created from my own background, where we own and operate a multitude of businesses across Northern Ireland, hotels, hospitality. And one of the very first conversations, whilst we've created a safety, compliance and training platform, The gentleman who was our outside consultant safety, who had worked with us for probably well in excess of 15 years, who was one of the leading safety consultants in the whole of the UK, expert court speaker, one of the biggest insurance experts. And whilst he had worked for us, I went to him, I said, okay, Mark, as the expert in this field, how do we make things better, quicker, faster? And that was exactly his concern. He was saying, well, look, in doing this digital technology is going to do me out of a job. But ironically, several years later, when we looked at the data, and again, as we all come back to the data, on average, it was about 70% of the administration that he was doing beforehand disappeared because he was running around, looking for sheets of paper, looking for pen, looking for ever. So I think that goes back to the previous question, just as a note for everybody. Even those people who may have the biggest concerns and fears, that if you address it correctly and bring them on the journey, actually can be the biggest advocate. So again, Jason, just reciting the question, just if you could look at sort of one practical step for 26 for anybody in this topic, what would it be?
Yeah, look, everybody wants to adopt technology. Everybody wants to make more money, make their customers happy, and they want to be more efficient. And the question is, where do you start? And in my opinion, you should start with what's called a data strategy or a data plan. So the concept of a data plan or a data strategy, and you can bring in consultants to help you with that. You can go to ChatGPT and ask about it. You can Google it. It's not, a made up term, but it's simply the idea of how do you get all of your data into a single place so that you can action it. So, people have heard of data lakes and people have heard of data warehouses. I'd like to give a shout out to a tech founder here in the US named Ross Ligon. He started a company called Metolius Golf. And what Metolius does is it takes all of your different systems and it pulls the data into a single place and gives you dashboards and gives you insights and gives you recommendations and can automate marketing and do quite a bit more. So there are all-in-one systems. Club Caddie is one of those. And then there are also systems that aren't all-in-one. And so, you can't always make the switch of we're ripping out everything and starting over with a new system that does everything for us. And if you're not doing that, that's okay. Do it piecemeal, do it part by part. But you have to figure out how to get the data into one place to have the golf course of the future. And that starts with a data plan or a data strategy.
No, that's brilliant. And I think just from Obbi's perspective, if I add on, and again, I spoke about this in multiple education seminars, is probably the best advice we would give is what we call red book planning. And that's a term we come up with, is that if you take that element of as is at the moment, and you take your team, and we always suggest take as many of your team as possible into a room with a whiteboard, a clipboard, in this case, doesn't even need technology, and put them down and say, okay, well, look, this is where we're at the minute, but there's two fronts of this. Is one, well, if we imagine all the bad things that could maybe hypothetically happen, worst case scenario, simply because of the fact we're in that sort of compliance and safety world, put them all on a sheet of paper and say, well, actually, if they did happen tomorrow morning with our existing systems, how do we mitigate the risk? Similarly, as well, tying together, Frederick, maybe from your side and Jason's perspective, as an operator myself, having bought lots of technology over the years, is that magic wand scenario to say, okay, so I'm a hotel operator and owner in the same way Jason, as you know, obviously is a golf corner from your side, but taking your team together and saying, okay, folks, this is where we're at the minute. Forget about limitations and bits and pieces, but if we had a magic wand, what would we like our solution to do for us? What would we like our vendors, our partners, our operators to do for us like that? It's that whole conversation around, we know you're buying new technology tomorrow morning. Well, how supportive is that partner? Are you getting a piece of technology thrown over the fence that you have to take yourself, do everything yourself, and support is nothing whatsoever? Or is it, okay, the same technology where the team, whether it be Jason's team, Frederick's team, the Obbi team, are saying, okay, we have done this hundreds and hundreds of times. We are former operators in many cases. We know the challenge and the fears you're going through, and we're there to hold the hands. So at this case, and certainly I have a couple of questions maybe sort of send in beforehand, but just if I open up to the floor, and certainly if anybody wants to stick on cameras, open up the microphone. And as I said again, this is where we just get inundated in every webinar with hundreds and hundreds of people. So please don't all jump in front of each other. If you have any questions you want to shout in. I think, Jason, to be honest, it's the Irish accent they just don't understand. They just maybe turn on the cameras and open the mute. just as I say, with a couple of questions sent in beforehand, and certainly if anybody wants to stick stuff in. Sandy, going ahead, yep.
Yeah, this is a similar question that I put into the Q&A, but I thought I'd just step in and let you have it anyway. I mean, I was just interesting, all interesting stuff. I'm the finance director of my golf club, so saving money, using money more appropriately and efficiently is something that's of great interest to me. I was trying to get a feel for whether there's a sort of sweet spot in your offerings, in that what is it appropriate to golf clubs within a certain or above a certain size range? Can it be tailored for smaller clubs, or is it generically appropriate to all clubs?
Where do you want to start, Sandy? Sorry, who's that directed to?
It was directed to Jason and to Frederick, in whichever order you want.
All right, Frederick, I'll go first on this one. You take the next one. Every club is different, right? Clubs are different in revenue, clubs are different in staff, clubs are different in amenities. And so I think it's really on your technology provider to build modules, build plans, build packages that are tailored to clubs like yours. So I don't have standardized pricing. I don't think any two clubs in the country are playing the exact same rate, in North America, simply because they're all so different, and they have different requirements. And so that should also, those packages enable you to start somewhere and then to grow up and move upstream to add additional products as you get value out of it. And so I would start with your biggest problem. You don't buy technology, you buy solutions to problems, and make sure that whatever solution you're looking at has the capabilities to grow with you too.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was getting really towards whether it can be tailored to the needs of an individual club or whether it's a generic product, and I think you've answered that as being the former.
Yeah, definitely tailored.
Yeah, on our side is we believe that since it's a SaaS subscription, all new functionalities, like, they are going to be embedded. So everything that's new comes into your subscription. However, we are going to tailor as well, basically, the plan that you will get based on the length of the season. We're going to make sure that the pricing that we apply, is coherent based on the region you are operating. Because if you have a 6 months winter, why would you be priced the same as somebody that will receive images all year long in the middle of the desert? So for the maintenance side of things, we do it based on the length of your season. And then all new features, they are always included because we want you to make the most of what's available in the world of technology.
And I think, Sandy, just coming in on that point, even from our own side, we're sitting with clubs in Ireland, club in GB, clubs in America, clubs in New Zealand, etc. The commonality we see with all of those is that, as you've touched there about the size and scope of your solution, as we talked on, I think our smallest club there, and Michael's in the call, Mike, correct me, our smallest club is 9 on a single site. Our biggest operator is 1,600 people across multiple sites and a multi-course operator. Any good solution has to work for you. And I think the other bit as well, I am a former finance director, that, you're looking at the whole monetary side of stuff. But as I always point out, there is tangible money and intangible money, as we all know. Obbi strapline, you go in there, is saving time, saving money, and mitigating risk. But I think sometimes what we've seen is that, one of the big things we work is from around risk mitigation. And one of the first conversations we get asked by some individuals who maybe are not aware of the full thing, is this going to reduce my insurance bill? And we say, well, we can't guarantee it. It might not. But whenever you look at in behind, well, look, there's many ways of saving money. Jason type of stuff. Well, look, is it efficiency? Is it opportunity? Is it extra revenue? You don't know. Frederick's type of stuff we spoke about. Well, actually, if you can get data around your agronomy type of stuff, and you're able to see leakage in terms of grass, and once I'm not an expert, Frederick, so I'll probably later, but grass is maybe not as being well maintained. If you have more data, that stops it going the wrong direction. Even if you get in 1 week earlier, 2 weeks earlier. So it's that bit there that I think the commonality from all guys is the solution fits everybody. Depend on your solution, and more so looking back to that, efficiency of money, can come in many, many other ways, rather than just as am I putting more to the top line or I'm putting more to the bottom line. But thank you, great question. Anybody else at this stage? Okay. So at that point, folks, it's just obviously conscious of time, so we're right on the 45 minutes as planned. It's just to say, look, a massive, massive thank you. First and foremost, obviously, from Frederick and Jason, both giving up their time like that there and coming across. And as I said, it certainly goes without saying, whilst all of us have got individual customers on here at the minute, certainly, as Sandy said, look, if there's any further questions, either from Obbi's perspective, just popping, sorry, Daniel, just in your question, jump up like that there. Jason or Frederick, all our detail will be shared afterwards. And certainly in terms of either individual people, teams, or yourselves, all three companies would be delighted to help. So all it leaves me to say, look, I thank you very much on behalf of my own side of things. A massive thank you to my own team, specifically Casper and Michael, helping putting this all back. As you see it, these things don't come together, particularly whenever I get locked in a waiting room beforehand at the very start with Jason and Frederick on either side. So massive, massive thank you.